Every year, human beings collectively agree to follow a rigid mathematical schedule. We map out time zones, we synchronize our watches, and we stand shoulder to shoulder in massive crowds to count backward from 10. We expect the transition into a new year to be entirely orderly. Terror is most effective when the exact rules we rely on to govern our universe decide to stop working. To see how that looks, we have to start on the ground. Picture a desolate, ice-covered road, 30 minutes past midnight. The temperature is dropping, and a young couple is driving home in the dead of winter. If we want to understand what happens when reality fractures, we first have to establish what a purely physical threat looks like when every human survival instinct kicks in at once. The headlights sweep across the empty street, and suddenly, a woman is standing dead center on the asphalt. The driver slams the brakes and wrenches the wheel. The tires lose their grip, sending the car violently spinning across the black ice. The car stops, facing the exact direction they just came from. The woman is still there. She lunges, throwing herself entirely onto the hood. She grips the car with one hand, violently stabbing the windshield with a massive kitchen knife, her eyes locked directly on the driver. In a state of blind panic, the driver throws the car into gear, accelerating and swerving wildly back and forth. On the fourth swerve, her grip fails. She rolls off the hood, hits the freezing pavement hard, and stops moving completely on the shoulder of the road. The driver wants to call the police, but his girlfriend, Duda, shuts it down immediately. With cold mechanical logic, she argues that because they had been drinking, they'd be blamed and arrested. They flee the scene, leaving the motionless body in the dark. Everything that happened on that icy road obeys the strict laws of physics. The weight the driver carries forward is entirely terrestrial. It is the heavy, agonizing guilt of abandoning a human being and never knowing her fate. Guilt is something a rational mind can process. Consider two guys who met as undergrads studying computer science at UC Berkeley. Their entire friendship is built on logic, data, and rational problem solving. Years later, the narrator is living in New York. He spends his New Year's Eve at an upscale rooftop party in Williamsburg. Around 11:30 p.m., he strikes up a conversation with a woman standing alone near the bar. She tells him her name is Maitreyi. She's an artist from San Diego who used to paint graffiti murals. She shares hyper-specific details. Her birthday is April 28th, and she has two cats, one named Mia. They connect, leave the party, and go back to his apartment in the East Village. When he wakes up the next morning, she is gone. But his front door features a standard deadbolt that can only be locked from the outside with a key. The lock is engaged. The windows only open a few inches. There is no second exit. A locked room mystery is inherently maddening. It forces a logical brain to momentarily question its own sanity, desperately cycling through impossible scenarios before giving up and searching for an external explanation. Later that day, acting on a strange impulse, he calls his best friend Garrett, who currently lives on the other side of the planet. Garrett complains about a girl he met the night before who also vanished without a trace. Her name was Maitreyi. This timeline maps out the sequence of events. Garrett meets Maitreyi at a party in Hong Kong, and they hit it off right around 11 p.m. local time. Hong Kong is 13 hours ahead of New York. So when Garrett met Maitreyi, it was exactly 10 a.m. on New York's timeline. The New York encounter happens at 11:30 p.m. New York time, exactly 13 and a half hours later. We can look at the raw data for international aviation. A direct flight from Hong Kong to New York takes a minimum of 15 hours. The physical distance exceeds the available time window. She shared the same childhood stories, the exact same birthday, and the same pet names on two different continents with two best friends. When the math breaks, logic fails, leaving two highly educated men to accept that they interacted with something impossible. Deep in the woods of Vermont, the variables are even more limited. The narrator's father and his friend Victor are spending New Year's Eve at a remote ski lodge, situated on a lake and surrounded by nothing but pure forest. They are sitting upstairs, watching the snow fall over the ice, when the darkness breaks. A massive, silent flash of pure white light erupts. It doesn't fall from the sky. It radiates upward, directly from beneath the solid ice. They step out onto the back deck and immediately hear a young boy screaming for help. Following their basic human instincts, They rush out onto the freezing surface of the lake, locking onto a small silhouette standing in the snow. A second blinding flash forces both men to their knees. When their vision clears, the ice is entirely empty. The child is gone, leaving an unbroken layer of snow in every direction. Terrified, the men scramble back toward the lodge. Victor points up at the house. Staring down at them from the dark glass of the second-story window they just left is the exact same little boy. There are no travel times to calculate and no missing keys to account for. When an entity moves from the center of a frozen lake into a locked second-story room in a matter of seconds, the standard logic of how objects occupy space stops being useful. The men tear through the lodge, checking every room, every closet, and every locked door. The house is completely empty, yet they spend the rest of the night listening to the faint sound of a child laughing in the dark. Faced with the impossible, people choose different survival mechanisms. Duda buried her guilt in cold denial. The two friends endlessly recalculate flight times, and a father in Vermont refuses to speak of the light under the ice for decades. The human brain is an engine designed to recognize patterns and find conclusions. When an event lacks an ending, the absence of closure becomes its own kind of psychological torture. Every New Year's Eve, we count down the seconds because we trust the next day will follow the same rules as the last. But for those who have seen the timeline split or a child vanish into white light, that trust is gone. They move forward knowing that the boundaries they rely on are far more fragile than they appear.